Welcome to Impartial Points, and our explainer on budget reconciliation, a complex legislative tool that has gained increasing attention in recent years. It's been used to shape some consequential policies in U.S. history, from tax cuts to healthcare reform. But what exactly is budget reconciliation? How does it work? Why does it exist? And how is it used today? In this video, we're taking a deep dive into the history, mechanics, and impact of budget reconciliation. By the end, you'll understand why this process is both controversial and critical to shaping U.S. budget policy and why it's often at the center of congressional battles. What exactly is budget reconciliation? Budget reconciliation is a legislative process that allows Congress to pass certain budget-related bills with a simple majority vote in the Senate, bypassing the typical 60-vote threshold needed to overcome a filibuster. It's designed to align revenue and spending with the priorities outlined in the annual budget resolution. Why does it exist? Reconciliation was created to make it easier for Congress to adjust taxes, spending, and deficits without being bogged down by procedural hurdles. It's a tool for fiscal policy, not a catch-all for passing any legislation. It's all about the money. In practice, it's generally used by the party in power to advance policy that heavily influences spending, or advance spending in a way that can help achieve the party's policy goals. What are the origins of budget reconciliation? The Congressional Budget Act of 1974. Reconciliation was introduced as part of the Congressional Budget and Impoundment Control Act of 1974, a landmark law aimed at improving Congress's control over the federal budget process. This law established the Budget Resolution, a framework for federal spending and revenue targets. The Congressional Budget Office, a nonpartisan agency to provide economic analysis. Reconciliation, a mechanism to align actual tax and spending laws with the budget resolution. Before 1974, Congress lacked a unified process for managing the federal budget. The Act provided a structured timeline and tools for aligning policy with fiscal goals. How does budget reconciliation work? The reconciliation process follows a detailed series of steps. 1. Adopting the budget resolution. Congress begins by passing a budget resolution, a non-binding framework that sets targets for federal spending, revenue, deficits, and debt. This resolution may include reconciliation instructions or reconciliation directives, which direct specific congressional committees to draft legislation that meets the outlined fiscal targets. 2. Drafting reconciliation bills. Committees in the House and Senate are tasked with drafting reconciliation legislation. These bills are generally limited to policies affecting spending, revenue, and the federal debt limit. 3. Combining and voting on the bill. The committee's proposals are combined into a single reconciliation bill. The bill is then debated and voted on in both the House and Senate. 4. Avoiding the filibuster. In the Senate, reconciliation bills cannot be filibustered, meaning they only require a simple majority of 51 votes to pass. What's the Byrd rule? One of the most important features of reconciliation, and one of the most limiting, is the Byrd rule, named after Senator Robert Byrd of West Virginia, which was adopted in 1985. The Byrd rule places strict limits on what can be included in a reconciliation bill. Relevance to budget. Provisions must affect federal revenue or spending and cannot be merely incidental to budgetary goals. Jurisdiction of committee. Provisions must come from relevant committees. No long-term deficit impact. Policies that increase the federal deficit beyond a 10-year window are typically prohibited. No extraneous matters. Non-budgetary provisions, such as social policy changes, cannot be included. If a provision violates the Byrd rule, it can be removed from the bill through a process known as a Byrd bath. A senator must raise a point of order about a provision. It doesn't happen automatically. A unique part of the Byrd rule is that it's a Senate rule. It only applies there officially, but because senators can invoke it during the reconciliation process, it means the House has to comply with it as well. How has budget reconciliation been used historically? Early use. In its early years, reconciliation was used sparingly and primarily for minor adjustments to spending and revenue policies. However, its scope expanded significantly over time. In the 1980s and 1990s, reconciliation became a key tool for obtaining spending cuts during the early Reagan administration. President Bill Clinton used reconciliation multiple times during his presidency. In the 2000s, reconciliation was used to pass significant tax cuts under President George W. Bush in 2001 and 2003. These tax cuts were controversial because they increased the deficit, but were designed to expire after 10 years to comply with the Byrd rule. Affordable Care Act. Under President Obama, the Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare, was passed through a combination of traditional legislation and reconciliation. While the main ACA bill required 60 votes in the Senate, a follow-up bill to make budget-related adjustments was passed through reconciliation. Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. In 2017, President Donald Trump and the Republican-led Congress tried to use it to repeal portions of the Affordable Care Act, but failed when Senate Republicans wouldn't support it. Later, they used reconciliation to pass the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. This legislation reduced corporate tax rates and made significant changes to individual tax brackets. COVID-19 relief. In 2021, President Joe Biden and the Democratic-led Congress passed the American Rescue Plan through reconciliation. This $1.9 trillion package included direct stimulus payments, enhanced unemployment benefits, and funding for vaccines and health care. Inflation Reduction Act. Democrats also used reconciliation to pass the Inflation Reduction Act, focusing on climate initiatives, prescription prices, and corporate tax changes. Why is budget reconciliation controversial? Proponents say it has these advantages. Efficiency. Reconciliation allows Congress to bypass the filibuster and pass legislation with a simple majority. Focus on fiscal policy. It ensures that budgetary priorities can be addressed without procedural roadblocks. Critics say it has issues such as partisan tool. Reconciliation is often used by the majority party to push through legislation without bipartisan support. Bypassing debate. Critics argue that reconciliation undermines the Senate's role as a deliberative body by limiting debate and amendments. Complex rules. The Byrd rule and other restrictions can lead to convoluted bills that prioritize compliance over clarity. How does the budget reconciliation shape U.S. policy? Passing economic legislation. Some of the most impactful budget laws in recent history have been passed through reconciliation, including tax cuts, healthcare reforms, and economic stimulus packages. Shaping the political landscape. Reconciliation has become a battleground for partisan priorities, with each party using it to advance its agenda when in power. This dynamic has made the process both indispensable and divisive. Influence on budget deficits. While reconciliation can be used to reduce deficits, it has also been used to pass tax cuts and spending increases that contribute to long-term fiscal challenges. What's the future of budget reconciliation? As partisan divides deepen, reconciliation is likely to remain a key tool for advancing major legislation. However, its future faces several challenges. Calls for reform. Some lawmakers have proposed changes to the Byrd rule or the reconciliation process itself to make it more transparent and inclusive. Debate over scope. Questions persist about whether reconciliation should be used for major policy changes beyond budgetary matters. In summary, budget reconciliation is a powerful and complex tool that plays a critical role in shaping U.S. policy. From its origins as a procedural mechanism to its use in passing transformative laws, reconciliation has become a cornerstone of the legislative process. While it offers a way to navigate gridlock and enact change, it also raises important questions about transparency, bipartisanship, and the balance of power in Congress. Thank you for joining us in this exploration of budget reconciliation. We hope you found this discussion informative and insightful. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the world of information at your fingertips. If you found this video helpful, please like, subscribe, and share with others. Join us next time on Impartial Points.